It is now in order to consider amendment number 2 printed in House Report 111-82. For what purpose did the gentlewoman from Florida rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have an amendment on the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 2 printed in House Report number 111-82, offered by Ms. Kosmas of Florida.
Pursuant to House Resolution 352, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Kosmas, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Florida.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I may consume. I thank Chairman Gordon for bringing this important bill to the floor to address our water research needs. Access to clean and reliable water supplies is an issue that affects every community across our country. And my district, along the coastal Florida Central coastline. Local communities also must deal with the impacts of other major weather conditions, such as hurricanes, which have the potential to affect our water supplies. However, this is not just a coastal issue, as recent floods in North Dakota, Florida, and tornadoes in Tennessee and Alabama and other weather events across the country have exhibited to us and show us the need for this to be addressed at a national level. My amendment, which adds a provision to the Water Research Outcomes and Assessment section, mandates an assessment of the impacts of major weather events on our water supplies. Hurricanes, floods, and tornadoes can lead to saltwater intrusion, infrastructure damage, sewer overflows, stormwater runoff, and other conditions that can harm our water supplies and the surrounding environment. A better understanding of these impacts will aid local communities and states in addressing water supply issues before, during, and after major storms. Combined with the provisions in this bill, including the requirement to develop innovative tools to enhance water treatment and water purification technologies, this amendment will help address the impacts of major weather events over the long run through the development and implementation of policies to prevent and mitigate such vulnerabilities to our water supplies. A nationally coordinated assessment of the impacts of major weather events will ensure that our constituents have access to safe, reliable water supplies without interruption, and that providers will be able to meet federal standards, and that we will use our resources in a more cost-effective and efficient manner. I'd like to yield 2 minutes of my time to the gentleman from Ohio, Congressman Driehaus.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to congratulate my colleague from Florida on this amendment. I think it's an important amendment, and I think this bill comes at a very important time. Just today, our Ohio EPA Director, Chris Korleski, announced funding through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act coming to the state of Ohio, and specifically to Ohio's water projects. Over 69 drinking water projects and 255 water pollution control projects. And what the EPA director said in his statements, I think, is very telling. He said this additional federal funding will provide jobs while also improving Ohio's worn water infrastructure. Yes, we have a worn water infrastructure in the state of Ohio and in many states across the Midwest, and it is particularly taxed at times of natural disaster. So I think assessing the value of looking at tornadoes, looking at floods, and looking at the way in which our water resources are impacted is critically important, because we do have a system that is aging. When we talk about combined sewers, as we have in Cincinnati, and we have combined sewer systems across the Midwest and on the East Coast, we recognize that at times of flooding, we have raw sewage coming out into our waterways, into our streams, and they are especially taxed. We need to make sure that the appropriate precautions are in place to try to prevent these overflows, but also to help fix those systems in the aging communities in order that when we have natural disasters, we are able to ensure the population that we have clean drinking water available to everyone. So I want to thank my colleague from Florida for her efforts, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back to the gentleman from gentlelady from Florida.
Thank you. I appreciate your comments, Congressman Driehaus, and I urge adoption of the amendment. Yes, sir.
Let me just thank the gentlelady for this very constructive amendment. It makes our bill a better bill, and for her help on our committee and her leadership in terms of space and science.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate those comments. I reserve the rest of my time, the balance.
Gentlelady reserves. Is anyone opposed to this amendment?
Chairman, I claim the time in opposition to the amendment, though I don't necessarily oppose the amendment. I do have a statement.
Without objection. Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I actually rise in support of the amendment offered by Representative Kosmas of Florida. The amendment simply directs the agencies under the Interagency Committee to assess the impacts of natural disasters on water resources. We know that natural disasters such as floods, droughts, hurricanes, and all that can have a very significant effect on water levels and cause major disruptions in local communities. In my home state of Texas, we've recently seen the extremes to such so much water and way too much water in the form of hurricanes and too little, many times in the form of droughts. It's important that we achieve a better understanding of the impacts of these natural disasters on water resources so that local managers and state officials can plan and manage for future use and economic growth. It simply makes sense that we coordinate efforts at the local, state, and national level to achieve these ends. Now, I've long been a proponent of this type of coordination. During the 109th Congress, I sponsored a bill to create the National Integrated Drought Information System, and I'm proud to say that the program is currently up and running. NIDIS coordinates and integrates observations so that local water managers can better plan and can better predict for future uses. And while our nation will always face natural disasters of one form or another, we can do more to mitigate the effects through careful study and careful planning. The gentlelady's amendment moves in that direction, and I urge its passage. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman reserves. The gentlelady from Florida.
Continue to reserve.
Gentlelady reserves. Gentleman from Florida, from Texas.
Request of the chairman, do you have other speakers?
No, sir.
I yield back my time.
Gentleman reserves, yields back the balance of his time. The gentlelady from Florida.
Thank you. I yield back my time.
Gentlelady yields back the balance of her time. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlewoman from Florida. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.
Thank you.